Also, part of the reason I'm doing this video is because I get so many questions about why the McCanns do so many interviews, why they wrote a book, why they raise money for their fund. And if they are raising money for their fund, is it a grift or a scam or a con? And at this point, I think this lines up with my theory, right? They don't think she's going to be found. So what's the point of the fund? I think the point of the fund is to have control of the narrative. As long as they have enough money to sue anyone who suggests that they did it, like they sued Sonia Poulton, like they got Pat Brown's book taken down off of Amazon, like they got Amaral, the detective at the head of the case, they tried to sue him for libel and stop his books from getting published. So the fund allows them to control the narrative. The same reason that they do interviews, because it allows them to control the narrative. The same reason they wrote the book. Is the McCann Fund a scam? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze an interview the McCanns did with Channel 4 News around 2 years after Madeleine went missing. I have not watched this interview. I've seen clips of it, and I think it is extremely revealing. So without further ado, let's listen.
You're calling for a review of the investigation. Explain to us why.
I think the first thing to tell the general public is that the authorities haven't been doing anything proactive in the search for Madeleine for well over 2 years now, and we think it's fundamental for any major incident case review is undertaken to look at all the avenues that could be explored that might lead to new information coming.
Already we're off to a bad start. The journalist asked Jerry, "Why do you want Madeleine's case reviewed?" And listen to how he describes the case. Remember, part of the analysis we do is the unexpected versus the expected. So when a subject is asked a question, we can anticipate what a reasonable average person might respond. For example, if I were Jerry, I would say, "I want it reviewed because my daughter hasn't been found yet." Right? Or I want it reviewed because my daughter might still be out there. So let's listen to the words he uses to describe the case and his major complaints about what's happened. This should be very revealing. So if you picked up on it, comment below. Or if you're watching this on a premiere, let me know in the live chat. Which words did he use that were red flags, that were unexpected?
Tell the general public is that the authorities haven't been doing anything proactive in the search for Madeleine for well over 2 years now, and we think it's fundamental for any major incident.
Any major incident. So rather than talking about Madeleine's specific case, which is a kidnapping, as far as they are concerned, right? As far as the McCanns have said since day one, Madeleine was abducted, kidnapped, taken. But here, he uses the word incident when describing her case. An incident is a very broad concept. And I think he used that word because of leakage, because you always speak based on everything you know. So in his mind, what happened to Madeleine was an incident. Specifically, I think what happened to Madeleine was an accident. I think they accidentally killed their daughter and then covered it up in order to protect their family unit and to protect the remaining twins from being potentially taken from them or put into foster care while their parents go to jail. So just notice he describes Madeleine's alleged kidnapping as an incident, and I think that's very telling.
Case review is undertaken to look at all the avenues that could be explored that might lead to new information coming into the inquiry.
You say that they've been doing nothing proactive. What have they been doing for the last two and a half years? People might be surprised to hear that.
Well, I think if information comes in, certainly to the British authorities, that if they're able to, they will have a look at it, and if they feel it's necessary, they'll send it over to Portugal. But they're actually waiting for information to come in rather than trying to bring information in that could find it.
Do you think it makes it difficult for them though, because you have got your own private investigators looking for your daughter? Does that make the relationship with the police difficult?
It shouldn't. I mean, it's not competition. They should be working together, if anything. The fact, if there wasn't private investigators, there'd be absolutely no one looking for this. So I don't see why it's not a threat. We don't.
So listen to how he describes the search for Madeline. He says, looking for this. Remember, we're doing this analysis on the fly. So everything I'm doing here, if you've binged all my videos, you should be able to do this as well. And the reason I came back to YouTube is to teach people how to spot deception on the fly, because the average person doesn't have time to do a deep dive into a statement the way I used to do on my earliest videos before I left YouTube. If you can't recognize this stuff on the fly, chances are once the news report is over, or once you've finished reading the tweet or the headline, the misleading information will already be in your head, right? You'll already be biased and predisposed towards believing it because you read something and you didn't spot that it was deceptive, and now it's very hard to change your mind. So spotting the deception in real time is the key. It's the entire point of my channel. There's so much information now coming at us all the time that if you can't spot it on the fly and weigh your odds of it being deceptive or honest, you're going to lose more often than you're going to win. You're going to be misled and misinformed simply because you accepted something without at least weighing the possibility or weighing the odds that it is deceptive based on the words that were used. So listen again, he's talking about his alleged missing daughter. She's been missing for 2 years. Children have been found decades later. There is no reason for him to consider Madeline dead. There's no evidence she was dead. Right? If she was kidnapped, she could still be out there.
Working together, if anything. The fact, if there wasn't private investigators, there'd be absolutely no one looking for this. So I don't.
Looking for this. So instead of saying looking for Madeline, he says this. He refers to Madeline as this. And once again, I believe this is leakage, just like we saw earlier when he said it was an incident. The words he's picking are picked in milliseconds. So he says this instead of Madeline. That suggests he might be picturing a dead body. He might already know that Madeline is dead. So he's picturing her as a cadaver somewhere, and he uses the word this instead of Madeline. As soon as she died, she stopped being Madeline. Then she became this. So notice, a change in words is a change in reality. That's a fundamental concept of statement analysis that we looked at with Bob Lazar, we looked at it with Bob Gimlin with Bigfoot, and we also see it in true crime cases. If someone starts referring to their child as this, it indicates a change in their reality. The parent might know something. They might know that Madeline is no longer Madeline. Madeline is now this. So listen out for any time they use Madeline's name or when they use a different word to describe her. And let's see if we can make anything of that.
I don't see why it's not a threat. We don't have the resources, they don't have statutory powers. So there's a lot more the authorities can do. We do have people though on the end of a phone line looking at emails, interviewing witnesses and generally following up new lines of inquiry. And they've passed a number of those on to the authorities. But you know, this is an unsolved serious case, and particularly given the profile, we think that...
Right, so this is a case. He's not saying, my daughter's out there. My daughter's still missing. Right? He's using terms like case, incident, this. These are highly impersonal words. Words we would not expect from someone who's talking about finding their missing daughter. To him, it's not a case, right? If your kid is missing, it's not a case to you. It's a personal, highly personal, extreme situation that you are in, and the this in the thing is your daughter, is Madeline. Right? This isn't just another police case to you. To you, it should be everything. Unless you know that she's never going to be found, in which case this is all moot, it's all for show, and potentially a grift. And just to be clear, this is all my opinion. So when I say eventually, because I've seen a clip of this, that I think the McCann Fund may be a grift, and I explain why, that does not mean 100% that it is. It's just my opinion. Or if I say that I think they killed their children, that I think they accidentally killed Madeline, that's my opinion.
That a full case review should be undertaken, and that has to be collaborative with the Portuguese authorities.
Leicestershire Police have said to us that they haven't shelved the investigation because it was never their investigation to shelve, because it's being led by the Portuguese. What more do you expect Leicestershire Police to do?
I mean, I think it's important to say, although Portugal has primacy with regards to the investigation, it doesn't mean that there isn't things that the British authorities can do. And certainly a review is one of the crucial, significant things that they can take part in.
I mean, I think what we're asking for today is for the governments to do more. Leicestershire have largely played their part, and they've done that to the best of their ability. But this needs to be done at higher level. It needs to be done between the governments, and there has to be an agreement and parameters set in terms of a review, how it's going to be done, and what it leads to. And the last Home Secretary, Alan Johnson.
So remember, in his mind, the things they can do are to review the case, right? They can collaborate, they can review, they can work together. But it never occurs to him to say they can find Madeline, right? They can find her. They can catch the guy who took her away. In his mind, the whole point of this ends at getting the governments to collaborate, which is interesting, right? It's more leakage. It's the truth in the lie. He's revealing what he thinks the final outcome of all this should be. And the final outcome does not end with Madeline being found. It ends with getting the Portuguese and British police to collaborate, to getting the governments to review the file. And in his mind, that seems to be the ultimate end goal, which is not what you would expect from someone who actually believes his daughter may still be out there and may still be recovered.
Ordered a scoping exercise that was undertaken by...
Also, whenever I do a McCanns video, I get lots of new subscribers and viewers, and thank you to everyone who is subscribing, who does check out my videos, and then who goes on and watches the entire playlist to see how we develop the analysis. But since there are always so many new viewers whenever I do a McCanns analysis, I just want to point out that here we are only looking at the words of the McCanns, right? So I'm not interpreting what they say or putting words into their mouth or considering outside evidence. I'm simply listening very closely to what they say and pointing it out to you, or I'm listening closely to what they say to see if they use words that are empirically correlated with deception, right? So words that people use when they are lying, whether they use those words in order to persuade because they know they're lying. So liars often feel like they won't be believed because they know that they're lying, so they use persuasive words. Or they use words that indicate that they shouldn't be believed, like when they say sort of or kind of, or I think, I feel, I suspect, right? All those prefaces mean that you cannot necessarily take what they say at face value. So here, I'm just pointing out that in his mind, the most they can get out of all this, out of this fund and all the activity they're doing about trying to reopen the investigation, is to get the governments to collaborate. He has not mentioned anything about them actually being able to find Madeline. And then we have to use our deductive reasoning to figure out why that might be. And one reason why that might be is because he knows Madeline is dead. He knows that she's buried somewhere where she will never be discovered. And I've gone over that in many videos, so you can see my full theory about where she is. And a potential idea to be able to find her. Right, a long shot. So I'm just pointing that out, right? So keep listening for if he thinks any of this will actually lead to her being discovered. And he still could, right? I've not watched this. Or if it all ends at just getting the British police to potentially have more influence on the Portuguese police.
By CEOP, and as far as we can see, after 6 months, nothing's been done with that scoping exercise, and we just don't think that's acceptable.
So the previous Home Secretary looked into the feasibility of having a review. Has there been a change in the attitude of the new government now that we've had a change of government?
Well, it's difficult to know because we're not getting any metrics to measure what the government are doing against. So there's no timelines, there's no deliverables, and time's just ticking on. We were told that we would be told the contents of that report. We haven't seen it, we haven't been told, and really, although the government say there are sensitivities, we fully understand that, but they should be doing more, and they should be responsible for ensuring that Madeleine gets the best investigation possible.
Wow. You can't write that. So listen, the ultimate goal is to have the government ensure that Madeleine gets the best investigation possible. Not that Madeleine gets found or that the kidnapper gets caught. Simply that she gets the best investigation possible. This is 3 times now that he's had the opportunity to tell us the ultimate goal of all this is to get Madeleine found. But he always stops short of saying that. He's more concerned with ensuring all the procedures are followed, all the metrics are delivered, all the deliverables are sent to him. If his daughter were really out there, it wouldn't matter if they didn't send a single metric, a single deliverable. The only deliverable the father of a missing child wants is his child delivered back to him. Right? He's not in the minutia of the investigation and ensuring that all the protocols are followed. Now, does this mean he knows for a fact that Madeleine is dead? Of course not. But if I'm betting my poker chips, I'm all in at this point in my series, right? We are 17 videos in that they know Madeleine is dead. And the fact that he is not even considering the idea that she might be found or the kidnapper might be caught when he's talking about the end goal of their entire McCann fund is very revealing. Right? He's not doing that deliberately. It's because you always speak based on everything you know. He knows she won't be found, so the most he can do here is just ensure that all protocols are followed and that the finger never points back at them. Also, part of the reason I'm doing this video is because I get so many questions about why the McCanns do so many interviews, why they wrote a book, why they raise money for their fund, and if they are raising money for their fund, is it a grift or a scam or a con? And at this point, I think this lines up with my theory, right? They don't think she's going to be found. So what's the point of the fund? I think the point of the fund is to have control of the narrative. As long as they have enough money to sue anyone who suggests that they did it, like they sued Sonia Poulton, like they got Pat Brown's book taken down off of Amazon, like they got Amaral, the detective at the head of the case, they tried to sue him for libel and stop his books from getting published. So the fund allows them to control the narrative. The same reason that they do interviews, because it allows them to control the narrative. The same reason they wrote the book, because it allows them to put their narrative into writing. That way, when they do interviews, there's a less chance that they can slip up, because they can always say, as I said in the book. So even if they're lying, they're technically telling the truth with that preface. As I said in the book, a kidnapper took her. Right? So it allows them to have their story written in stone so they can always refer back to it so they don't need to constantly recall a script. And it allows them to preface anything they say with, as I said before, or as I said in the book, so that they don't have any stress of fabricating a lie, because technically they're telling the truth. They're being honest that they said something in a book, even if what they said in the book is not true. Right? That's an advanced technique that liars use, the prefaces they use to make a lie technically true. And this will be in the deception deck. So if you haven't pre-ordered, you can pre-order the deception deck at deceptiondeck.com, which is my 52 favorite rules for spotting lies. And one of them is the preface, I want to say. Right, so liars often say, I want to say, or we saw with Nadia, who I believe cheated on Warzone, right? A cheater. When she denied cheating allegations, said, I want to say I have never cheated. All that meant was she could have done a polygraph. She could have done a lie detector and passed it because she prefaced, I do not cheat with I want to say. So technically she was being true. She had a desire to say she did not cheat. That was true, but it does not mean that the statement itself is true, right? I can honestly want to say I've been to the moon. I want to say I've been to the moon is 100% true. It doesn't mean I've been to the moon. It just means I want to say I've been to the moon. All right, so I don't want to belabor that point. Let me know in the comments if it doesn't make sense. I know some people struggle with that concept, and I'm happy to explain it. And if you do have a question about that concept, check the comments and see if I've answered in someone else's comment.
We're not aware of any progress since the CEOT report was handed into the government at the end of March, and even allowing for a change of government in the last 6 months, we're not aware of anything that has carried on from that report being given in.
And you met with Theresa May, the new Home Secretary. What promises did she give you? Did she tell you what was in that scoping report?
Well, I think that's just it. There weren't any promises. In fact, she said, I don't want to make any commitments. But basically what we need to know is, what are they doing? What are they going to do with that report? Have they read the report?
Do you think she had even read it?
Well, she hadn't. When we met her, she said that, which was a bit disappointing.
Notice all their end goals are clerical. Did she read the report? Have they filed the report? Does the report have all the metrics it needs, and are the pages properly numbered? If you've seen my video, What Do Innocent Parents Sound Like? Which I did a few weeks ago. What do innocent parents look like? You can find this in the McCanns playlist. If you listen to the parents, the actual parents of missing children talk, they do not care how the investigation is done. And if you look at one of the videos, one of the parents I covered in that video, the biological mother of Gannon Stouch, who was kidnapped and killed by his stepmother, when she spoke to the police, she was bullying them to go find her son. She was not cared if they kept her in the loop. She did not care if they kept her in the loop or filed reports with her. So I am developing the belief that the McCann Fund is just another way for the McCanns to control the narrative, because it allows for them to shut down anyone who does not agree with them. And it allows for them to fund their own private investigators whose sole objective is to investigate the narrative that they are pushing. I bet if we look at the mandates that these private investigators have, and maybe someone has access to those, I know lots of you guys are very deep into this case and look beyond just the words that the parents use. That if we are available to see the mandates that these private investigators have, I'm sure the mandates do not include looking for Madeleine's dead body. I'm sure that the mandates all involve finding a kidnapper and not considering any other possibilities besides that. And if there is a mandate to find a dead body, I'm sure that it is very specific about where those private investigators should be looking.
Hopefully now she has, but we need to know, where are we going now? Because we truly believe.
In fact, if anyone has an interview with someone who was a private investigator for the McCanns, I'd be very curious to see it. I'd like to know what the mandates were, what they told them to do, and what not to do, because that could be very revealing. So if you have a link to a video like that, please do send it to me. You can use my submission form at deceptiondeck.com.
It's going to help the search for Madeleine. We know it's not easy. But
once again, let me just rewind since I interrupted so much here. Listen to what she says. Does she say this will help us find Madeleine? Or will it help us search for Madeleine and look for Madeleine or investigate the incident? right? So even in their own words, their objective is not to find Madeline, which is odd, which suggests that they know she will not be found. So they stop short of saying that. The word find her does not even occur to them.
Going to do it with that report? Have they read the report?
Do you think she had even read it?
Well, she hadn't when we met her. She said that, which was a bit disappointing. Hopefully now she has, but we need to know where are we going now, because we truly believe it's going to help the search for Madeline. We know it's not easy, but it doesn't mean it's not possible.
Right. So help the search for Madeline. The best they can do is hope that the search gets funded. Specifically, I think the search that they are controlling, the search for a kidnapper. Not help us find Madeline or locate Madeline. Right, so the words people use are very important. Some people might think that we're taking a big leap. Well, DD, they're searching for her. So obviously if they're searching, they will find her. They want to find her. Well, if you're commenting that, you're putting words into Kate's mouth. She never said find. She just said search. You might be inferring that she thinks Madeline will be found, right? And taking a logical leap for her that she didn't make. But she didn't say that, right? She just said search. She stops short of saying find or locate. The best she can hope to do is to search for Madeline. Why? Well, she knows something. She knows probably that Madeline's body is so well hidden that it will never be found.
I just wanted to ask you, you've chosen to do the interviews now, 3.5 years on. People will be wondering how on earth you keep going and how you keep this story in the news after such a long time.
Well, we don't, although we offer to do things like this, really, I think it's a reflection that the public are very interested. And
I think the public care about Madeline, and that's why it's still a story, for want of a better word. And which is great, because without the public support, I don't know.
It's strange, right? The public cares about Madeline. That's why this is a story. Not that we need to find Madeline. That's why it's a story. It's a story because the public care. And she didn't include herself and Jerry. Actually, she didn't even say the public care about finding Madeline, right? She just said the public care about Madeline. Let's listen to that again.
Well, we don't, although we offer to do things like this, really, I think it's a reflection that the public are very interested. And
I think the public care about Madeline, and that's why it's still a story, for want of a better word.
The public care about Madeline. That's interesting. Right, they care about Madeline. You can care about someone who's dead, right? They care about her history, about the mystery surrounding her. So even there, she doesn't say the public cares about finding Madeline.
Which is great, because without the public support, I don't know where we'd be.
I think that's crucial. The government won't do anything without pressure, and it's the public. The government are accountable to the public who elected them, and that's what we're asking for, is the public to ask our government to do more and to work with the Portuguese government as well. And we should be putting pressure on.
Right, to do more, not to find Madeline. So just notice this. I don't think they've said find or locate Madeline once, or catch the culprit who took her, or even solve the case. Right? They did. I don't even think they've said solve the case, which would be extremely weak, but at least still show that their end goal is to figure out what happened. And this is something we've seen since day one with the McCanns. They have zero curiosity about what actually happened. Their priority is the investigation, how it's conducted, what the leads are, if the protocols are being followed. Why is that such a big priority to them? Because they are petrified of the investigation turning back on them. That's my belief. Their priority is not finding Madeline. They haven't said that once in this interview. And ostensibly, this is an interview about the McCann Fund. Notice it's not even the Madeline McCann Fund. So the fund is named after Madeline. But not once have they talked about the money being spent to find her. Only to investigate, to search, to get governments to collaborate. In other words, in order to increase their influence over the investigation. That is their priority. That much is clear to me. And why would that be the biggest priority to them? Because they are petrified of it. They have a life and death need to control that investigation. Because if they ever lose control of it, and it points back at them, they are screwed. If you've seen my other videos about the McCanns, I do not believe they are particularly good liars. They're not particularly good at scripting their lies. They're not particularly good in interview settings like we've seen here.
Sure.
And also, if you do want to see what a sophisticated liar looks like, you can watch my most recent video, How to Spot a Sophisticated Manipulator, which I think is one of my most underrated recent videos. So even if you're on this video just because you're interested in the McCanns, this one may also interest you because of the lessons that it teaches. Right? Sophisticated liars use different techniques than unsophisticated liars.
On both of them to solve this. We can't stop doing what we do. We need to find Madeline. We live in a,
Okay, so finally, we're 5.5 minutes into this interview, and he's finally said we need to find Madeline.
His government as well, and we should be putting pressure on both of them to solve this.
Right, to solve this. So now we're finally getting the words we should have been hearing all along. And he didn't even say, to solve the kidnapping or the abduction, but just to solve this.
We can't stop doing what we do. We need to find Madeline. We live.
And I agree when he says we can't stop doing what we do. Like I just said, they have to keep doing this because they have to control the investigation. And now finally he says we need to find Madeline.
In a life that's somewhat in limbo between our previous life, which is very, very happy, and somewhere now where we've got a different life but without Madeline in it. And we can't really get off that treadmill until we find her, or at the very least what's happened to her.
And how do you...
See, so we can't stop doing this. Remember, this is all in response to why do you do so many interviews? So our life is in limbo. We're stuck on a treadmill until Madeline is found or until we figure out what happened. Both of which I think he knows will never happen.
How do you keep going? How do you keep open alive? There must be days when it's very, very difficult.
We've worked so hard. Understandably, we're Madeline's parents. We're going to do everything that we can. And we work really hard. And there are days when it feels that obstacle after obstacle is thrown in your way. And obviously the clock keeps ticking, the calendar keeps turning. And there's days that we just look at each other and think, God, I wish it was all over, But basically...
Wow. So usually I ask in the live chat during the premieres. So if you're a subscriber, every video I do and you have your notification bell turned on, you will get notified. I premiere every video and I am in the live chat when every video premieres, answering questions, bantering with subscribers and members. So I do recommend checking out my premieres, and you can get notified for all those when you turn on the notification bell and subscribe. And usually in the live chat, I ask people, who do you think is a worse liar if they are lying, Kate or Jerry? And it's interesting the responses we get. So let's listen to Kate's answer here, which I think is particularly revealing because if they are lying, they lie in slightly different ways. And the mistakes they make are slightly different from one another. I have my own personal opinion about who is the worst liar, but I don't want to give it because it's so interesting to see everyone else's opinion. So I think once I give my opinion, it will bias everybody, and then the debate won't be as entertaining.
In your way, and obviously the clock keeps ticking, the calendar keeps turning, and there's days that we just look at each other and think, God, I wish it was all over.
So I believe her here when she says that they look at each other and say, God, I wish it was all over. I do think that Kate may have contemplated ending her own life because of what happened to Madeline. So I know lots of people say that she's very cold, or some people accuse them of being psychopaths. And I don't think that's the case, right? I'm not a clinician, so I can't diagnose them. But the things Kate says show such deep guilt and remorse for what happened that I do believe that if Madeline was killed in that apartment, Kate is the one who did it. And specifically, I think that she over-sedated Madeline, or even just gave Madeline the same dose of whatever sedative they gave her to calm down and put her to bed. And it just hit her differently because she had different food in her stomach. She may have been dehydrated from being out on the beach, or because she was going to bed later than usual. So when Kate says stuff like that, I'm not interpreting what she says, right? We're taking what she says at face value, like we've been doing with Jerry too. So listen again when she says this. I think that this is leakage. We can take her at her word.
When it feels that obstacle after obstacle is thrown in your way, and obviously the clock keeps ticking, the calendar keeps turning, and there's days that we just look at each other and think, God, I wish it was all over, you know.
And I believe her. Right, notice when she says, I wish it was all over. Not that I wish we had Madeline, or I wish we could find Madeline, or I wish we knew what happened to Madeline. Right, not things that would indicate that they don't know what happened. When she says, I wish it was all over, I think she's talking about their lives. Right? She didn't say, I wish we knew what happened. I wish Madeline was back. I wish we knew what was going on with her, or that I wish she would pop up, or they would find her. Just that I wish it was all over. That's the last resort of someone who knows that there is not going to be a happy ending. So they just wish it was over. Maybe they can just speed it up. And I think the only reason she doesn't do that is the remaining children. And I also think that was a factor in their minds when they decided to hide Madeline rather than call the police and report what happened to her. I think they did it out of, in their minds, a noble reason, right? There's nothing we can do for Madeline. We're doctors. I can picture Jerry saying, she's already dead. There's nothing we can do for her. But we have 2 more children, and if we can hide her, we can at least keep our other children. We won't be locked up in some Portuguese prison away from our home, losing our medical licenses, even if they just lock us up for a couple of years, and losing our children and having that stigma of being child murderers through neglect for the rest of our lives.
But basically, we wish Madeline was back with us, full stop. You know?
Okay, and then the second priority is wishing Madeline was back. Interesting. So the first priority is wishing all of this was over, and her second priority is wishing Madeline was back. Also notice those aren't the same thing. One is wishing all this was over, and I think she said, but, or something like that, we wish Madeline was back. So that tells us when she says it was all over, that is not the same as finding Madeline. When she says, I wish it was all over, she's not referring to the search for Madeline.
Parents are going to do everything that we can, and we work really hard, and there are days when it feels that obstacle after obstacle is thrown in your way, and obviously the clock keeps ticking, the calendar keeps turning, and there's days that we just look at each other and think, God, I wish it was all over, you know. But basically we wish Madeline was back with us.
Right, and then basically we wish Madeline was back. So that is interesting. When she says we wish it was all over, she's not referring to the search for Madeline. They're 2 different things. Right, she didn't say we wish it was all over and we had Madeline back. Right, she used the minimizing word, the exclusion modifier, basically, which is also in the deception deck, right? Which means that they're not exactly the same thing. It may be basically similar, but it's not the same.
With us, full stop. But we can't stop. While we're in this situation, we just have to keep going. It doesn't matter how tiring it is. It doesn't matter how many blocks are put in our way. We have to keep going because a little girl is still out there missing.
A little girl is still out there missing. That is strange from the mother of a missing child to say. It's similar to when Jerry said this. So notice, when they talk about Madeline, they're talking about a living girl in their memory, right? Or a hypothetical living girl, right? We need Madeline back. But when they talk about the investigation, are Madeline in the present, what's going on right now? It is we need to get this solved from Jerry. And then there's a little girl out there. Why not Madeline? Why not Madeline is out there? Why the change in language? I think Kate uses the words little girl because she is picturing someone who isn't Madeline anymore. She's picturing a dead body. And she's probably picturing it from memory. So let's listen again.
Situation, we just have to keep going. It doesn't matter how tiring it is. It doesn't matter how many blocks are put in our way. We have to keep going because a little girl is still out there missing. This is not solved, this case.
A little girl is still out there missing. I think this statement is very revealing. So A, she doesn't say Madeline is still out there missing. It's a little girl. And I think the change in language is because the little girl out there is no longer Madeline. It's a dead body. Is still out there. Why out there? Probably because she's picturing that little body outdoors, outside. So it's out there. And this goes back to my theory that I've developed in other videos where I think that Madeline may be in a well somewhere because wells are exposed to the elements, so it's out there. And obviously that she's dead. So a body in a well would be a little girl out there. Also, the fact that she says little indicates that she's thinking of the size of Madeline, kind of like in another interview where she said that Madeline was perfectly compact. Right, it was one of the few words she used to describe Madeline. Compact. Why? Who calls their kid compact? I think someone who was surprised at how small of an area they could fit her body in. Right, so when the stress hormone is high, when they were going through a life or death, fight or flight situation, she recalls, it is burned into her brain, just how surprising it is that she could fit her little girl into such a small space, how compact that little body was, that little girl who is now out there.
This case, she's still missing, and there's an abductor out there, there's a criminal out there who is free to do this over and over again if we let him. So there's
All right, so I'm not going to belabor this point because we've talked about the conclusiveness. Right. So one of the signs of a hoax is conclusiveness, where the person knows something that there's no evidence for. Here, as I point out time and time again, the McCanns are extremely conclusive that someone kidnapped Madeline when there is no evidence of a kidnapping. So they don't even entertain the idea that someone on the hotel staff took her, or one of their friends took her, or that she wandered off. Right. It has to be a stranger abductor. They didn't even point the finger at each other, right? They weren't together when she went missing. So they don't suspect anyone except a stranger kidnapper. They've done that since day one, which is the sign of a hoax. And now we have another slip up from Kate where she says that it's a he. So she knows for a fact that the abductor is a male. How could she know that? She couldn't, right? The reason she does that, I think, is because she's pictured this scenario in her imagination, and the guy she pictured is a he. So because it's a hoax, they're conclusive about it. She's stating something that really should be hedged with I think or I don't know, with conclusiveness, that it's a he and that he took her and that he's still out there. How would they know that?
It's another reason why the governments and the authorities should be doing more.
I was just going to say one of the simplest thing is Sean and Amelie's attitude, because they talk about Madeleine all the time, and when we're having one of those days where you just want it all to go away and you're feeling exhausted, and then just say when Madeleine comes home, and there's no reason why she can't come home that we know of, and it's happened for other children, and they know how hard we're working, and they want Madeleine home as well, and that really does give us renewed energy.
Right, so it's interesting. The twins are the ones who are mentioning that there's no reason Madeleine can't come home. Why do the twins bring that up? Probably because they don't know what actually happened. And just like you or me or anyone who doesn't know what actually happened, they understand there's a possibility. And they're probably telling that, right? It's interesting that he recounts the twins telling him that, because probably at home, they speak about Madeleine as if she's not coming back. They may be trying to prepare the twins for the fact that Madeleine is not coming back, but without telling them the whole truth. So the twins retort, well, there's no reason she can't come back. Why are you talking about her like she can't come back? Right, so it's interesting that he reveals that the twins seem to be debating him about whether or not Madeleine can come back, which may suggest that at home they are much more conclusive than they are in these public interviews about the fact that Madeleine is not coming home. And why would they be so conclusive? Because they know for a fact she's not coming home, because they know exactly what happened to her. They know exactly where she is.
And vigour to carry on what we're doing.
Now, in Sean and Amelie's words, Madeleine's missing. We need to find her. I mean, it's quite simple when they put it like that.
Right, so listen, Sean and Emily are speaking like I said the parent of a missing children should be speaking, that we need to find her. So I think all the people in my comments saying, well, maybe the twins know the truth. I don't think so, right? Just based on that. So the parents think it's so cute and charming that the twins think that they need to find Madeleine. Because as they've said already, they don't think finding Madeleine is even a possibility. They just want to ensure that there's a search and that they have some hand in controlling it. So listen to how charming they think it is that Sean and Emily are talking like people who actually don't know what happened to Madeleine. This is how they themselves should be speaking, but they don't. Right? They use the word find once.
Is renewed energy and vigour to carry on what we're doing.
Now, in Sean and Amelie's words, Madeleine's missing. We need to find her. I mean, it's quite simple when they put it like that,
Yeah, it is simple, right? Because that's how actual parents of missing children speak. So the other thing is, why is this so complicated for them then? Right? Why did Jerry say we need to keep doing what we're doing instead of we need to keep searching? Or why do they need renewed vigor to keep searching? If your kid were missing, I don't think you'd need any renewed vigor to search. Right? Parents of missing children search willingly. In fact, they search compulsively. They can't sleep at night. They punish themselves for taking a break. Right? As illogical as it may be, right? They whip themselves for the decisions they made that led to their kid going missing, and then whip themselves for even taking a moment to breathe or attempt to even enjoy themselves. But here we have lots of admissions, lots of leakage and slip-ups. Whereas if I were there interviewing them, I would love to ask follow-up questions. For example, why do you need renewed vigor to keep searching? Right, shouldn't the drive to find your daughter, for Kate, the maternal instinct, for Jerry, the paternal instinct to find your kid, should that not compel you? And then he says what gives them the renewed vigor is the twins. So maybe when he says we need to keep doing what we're doing, he's talking about continuing to put on a show for the twins, so that the twins don't ever figure out what they did to Madeleine. or to continue putting on a show for a search and controlling the search for the twins' benefit so that they never get caught and get taken away from the twins. Right, so notice how it's the twins who give him the renewed vigor, not Madeline, who may be out there in a dungeon somewhere getting tortured.
So you still believe that your daughter is alive and out there somewhere?
Well, certainly we know there's a good chance that she's still alive. I mean, at the minute she's just missing, so you have to assume she's alive because there's nothing to say otherwise.
And then we have the word you. Right? You have to assume she's still alive. That's distancing language. Kate didn't say, I think she's still alive. You, the news reporter who doesn't know anything, have to assume she's still alive. Suggesting Kate knows for a fact that she isn't. So just notice, Kate is not answering for herself.
Your daughter is alive and out there somewhere.
Well, certainly we know there's a good chance that she's still alive. I mean, at the minute she's just missing, so you have to assume she's alive because there's nothing to say otherwise. There's many cases, as you know.
So for example, instead of saying, I have to believe she's alive in order to go on, right? Or I believe she's alive. She says, you have to assume she's alive. And now we're going to get into analytical persuasion, where she's giving us some examples now of kids who went missing and came back. Right, statistics and anecdotes.
As you know, that have hit the media of children, and in many cases that haven't hit the media, of children who've been found years down the line. So you just have to keep going.
I mean, you could imagine that if we just gave up and years down the line we found her. I mean, there's no justification for giving up.
And so you keep on searching for as long as it takes?
Yeah, and we can't stop. I don't think any parent could stop.
I don't think you could live comfortably. I just don't think physically that you could.
So notice the distancing language, right? I don't think any parent could. You couldn't. They're not talking about themselves. It's almost like they're talking about characters in a show, right? And they're discussing how they should present themselves. Well, what would a parent of a missing child do? Well, a parent of a missing child could never give up, right? You have to assume she's alive. They're not speaking personally. One of the greatest indicators that someone's telling the truth is the word I, right? The pronoun I, because it places them into the response. It shows that they're taking responsibility for their answer, and it shows that they're aware of themselves as they're answering. So let's see if they say I once in this response. Or are they speaking hypothetically? Because they're not actually talking about their personal beliefs.
Just gave up and years down.
Case alive. I mean, at the minute she's just missing, so you have to assume she's alive because there's nothing to say otherwise. There's many cases, as you know, that have hit the media of children, and many cases that haven't hit the media of children who've been found years down the line. So you just have to keep going.
I mean, you could imagine that if we just gave up and years down the line we found her. I mean, there's no justification for giving up.
And so you
So they didn't say I once in that entire response. So neither one of them took personal ownership of their response. Everything was hypothetical, or the few times Jerry used we, where you split, where you share the ownership of the statement, which is not nearly as powerful as the word I. Overall, that does indicate deception. So for example, if you imagine someone on the stand in a courtroom and they're being cross-examined by an attorney, and the attorney says, "Did you kill your daughter?" And they say, "You have to assume I didn't kill my daughter," because there's many studies out there that you will see and you're aware of where parents didn't kill their kid and their kid was later found. We all have to keep hoping that my daughter's alive. What's the first thing the attorney would say in cross-examination? Non-responsive. Right? You didn't answer my question. You're talking about a bunch of hypotheticals and trying to persuade me or trying to persuade the jury, but you have not answered for yourself. I asked if you killed your daughter. Not the likelihood or examples of other parents who didn't kill their kids, are what I know and I'm supposed to assume. So when you consider things in that context, it's very easy to see when people are being non-responsive and deceptive. Also, remember, sometimes I have people say, well, that's just a term of speech, right? They're just speaking. When you are on a live interview with a reporter talking about something as serious as your missing daughter and requesting funds, people to open up their wallets to provide money for you to search for your daughter, that is not the same as sitting in a pub with your buddies, speaking casually and flippantly about movies and sports games. The more important the context, the more literal we have to be with people's words. The more important, higher the stakes, legal situations, the bigger the stakes, the more people will select their words carefully. And 99% of the time when someone's trying to deceive you, they do not tell an outright lie. They lie through omission, by leaving something out. So when they say you, or we, or you have to assume, they're picking those words very carefully. In a situation like this, you cannot give people the benefit of the doubt, because sophisticated liars, or even poor liars, right? Not particularly sophisticated ones, rely on you to put words into their mouths or ignore things that they said. Like when Kate said, we want it all to be over. So they rely on you to interpret, to overlook, to ignore, to forgive things, because that's how they lie without telling any direct lies, by misleading you, by leaving stuff out, or saying something in a particularly narrow way, or in a way that responds hypothetically like they just did here rather than personally, and they hope that you don't catch it. So you have to be on the lookout for that.
You keep on searching for as long as it takes.
Yeah, and we can't stop. I don't think any parent could stop.
I don't think you could live comfortably by step.
Right? I don't think you could live comfortably. Hey, you, reporter, I don't think you could live comfortably if your kid was out there and you knew it. I agree, right? That's 100% true statement. But that's not the same as Kate saying, I can't live comfortably until I know what happened to my daughter. Why can she not say that? Because she probably does know what happened to her daughter. Right? I believe she knows exactly what happened to her daughter. So she doesn't answer in the first person. Liars hope that you forgive that sort of thing. An I is a pronoun. It's instinctive. You don't have to think about using the word I. It's something you say more than almost anything else. In your lifetime, you will say I more than any other word. So when it's left out, it's particularly important.
I just don't think physically that you could, or mentally, you could actually reach that decision,
When you mentioned the public support and how important that is to you, how do you feel about the fact that there are still people who feel that you had something to do with it, and there are websites set up to this, and it must be quite hurtful still after all this time?
Sure. I think the key thing is that the motives of people who wish to persuade others that Madeleine is dead without any evidence to suggest that have to be questioned. We're here to try and make sure there's as good a search as possible, and that's, as far as I can see, the way the vast majority.
Right, so once again, we're here to ensure there's as good a search as possible. Not that we're here to find Madeleine.
I think the key thing is that.
So even now, when he's addressing people who are accusing them of having killed Madeleine, or are positing the theory that Madeleine's dead, he still cannot say, our job is to find her. He still stops short of that. And he's not doing that deliberately, right? He's doing that because subconsciously he knows something. So the word find her is not even occurring to him right now.
Is that the motives of people who wish to persuade others that Madeleine is dead without any evidence to suggest that have to be questioned. You know, we're here to try and make sure there's as good a search as possible, and that's, as far as I can see, the way the vast majority of the public want to see it happening. And I think they'll be shocked to find that the authorities have not been doing anything. Our focus is in making sure there is a good search, not in stopping one for a missing child.
Right, so our focus is to make sure there's a good search. I believe him. I believe that is their focus. I believe their entire focus is to make sure there's a good search for whatever they want people searching for, and not that Madeleine will be found, because they haven't said that themselves. All right, so this is just part one. There is a part two. So if you want to see part two, please do like the video and leave a comment. The way I pick the topics I talk about in the videos I make is by seeing how many views the videos get, the watch time, the like count, the comment count, and that's how I direct my my time and efforts. So I know I've got a huge interest in the McCanns case, so please do reflect that in the metrics on this video, and we'll follow up with part two very shortly. I do think this interview is extremely revealing. All right, with that said, let's check in with the members and the comments on my last McCanns video to see what members and other subscribers caught that I missed. So let's just look at a handful of my favorite comments from What Does a Guilty Denial Look Like, which was my last McCanns video. All right, so first up we have a comment from Veritas, a member. Thank you for being a member of the channel, Veritas. And Veritas says, around 59-minute mark, the father says the perpetrators haven't been brought to justice. Why more than one? Wouldn't one naturally assume a single kidnapper came to abduct little Maddie? And I do believe that that is a little bit of leakage, that this is a hoax, and that he is conclusive. And just like we saw Kate do in this interview, where she's conclusive that it was a male, they're conclusive that it was multiple kidnappers. Without any hedging, without any indication that they're not sure of it, which is a sign of a hoax, where they're really trying to push a narrative. And I replied to Veritas and I said, nice catch. I believe him. I actually believe him. I do believe there were two perpetrators that have not been brought to justice, and he is one of them. And since Veritas's comment raised the concept of narrative pushing, the topic of narrative pushing, I do want to address this. I've seen many comments about it, and McCann Case Tweet actually sent it to me on X, where people send me this pull quote from Kate's book, where she talks about having visions and dreams about Madeleine's private parts being torn apart. And they asked what my opinion on that is. Some people suggest that it shows abuse, right? It indicates abuse. It's a leakage about abuse. And in my opinion, that's not what it is. I don't see any language that would suggest abuse with the McCanns. I do know other statement analysts do see that, and I respect their opinions. I just don't see it myself, right? And my channel is all about what I see and what I believe. So here's my opinion on that quote that's been sent to me many times. And I replied, in my opinion, this is simply more narrative pushing. The McCanns, lacking evidence of Madeleine's kidnapping, resort to presenting visions and dreams as proof. This only proves their view of the audience as gullible and naive. By contrast, the Ramseys at least showed enough respect for the audience to produce a ransom note, right? So if you've seen my Ramsey series, you know that I believe they are also hoaxers, but they took the extra step of fabricating a ransom note. And I think that shows a little bit more respect for their audience, whereas the McCanns resort to presenting dreams and visions as proof, which should be insulting. All right, the next comment is from Captain Obvious, who says, I would love to see a detailed video on how unreliable witnesses statistically can be and usually are. And this comment is related to something I said in my last McCanns video, where we were talking about eyewitnesses, and I mentioned just how unreliable they are. and the sort of psychological reasons and behavioral science reasons that eyewitnesses are unreliable and can easily be manipulated. I was considering doing a video about that. Let me know in the comments if you want to do that, if you want me to make a video like that. I would also like to do a video like that, but the only reason I hesitate is that I've tried doing some more experimental videos where we look at other aspects of deception in my last few videos, but they haven't performed as well as these more straightforward deception detection videos. So for example, in my last video, how to spot a sophisticated manipulator, we looked at manipulation techniques. In the video before that, we looked at hoax 911 calls and how you can spot those, right? Whether the caller is the culprit or if they're actually a victim. And we also looked at, for example, deception in the media in my Nicola Bully series, how to spot oversensitivity, how to analyze certainties. But none of those performed that well. So if you do want me to do some more experimental things that dive deep into other aspects of deception besides just deceptive language, which is obviously the bread and butter of the channel and my favorite. I think it is the most revealing. But there are other topics we can look at, like deception in statistics, right? How statistics can be manipulated to be deceptive. And you see this all the time in the media and in advertisements, eyewitnesses, manipulation techniques, 911 calls. So if you want to see more of that, please do go watch those other experimental videos. I only want to make videos that you guys want to watch. So if the view counts are low, it's basically just an indicator to me to move off the topic, and I'm happy to move off of it if there's no interest. But if you are interested, please make sure to watch those videos so that I get the signal and YouTube gets the signal that they're worth watching. All right, next up is a comment from A Walk in the Dark. And they say, I had to fudge the truth, i.e. lie to someone just yesterday to spare their feelings. And this show made me really aware of how I was doing it, what words I chose, how I phrased things. It was really interesting because a lot of what I said when I was lying related to the red flags and tells highlighted by DD. And yes, people, especially me, don't like to lie. And I like that comment because sometimes I get comments of people saying, hey, DD, you're teaching people how to lie, right? If they watch your videos, they'll know how to lie better. That's not the case. When you are lying, it is just as hard to lie, whether you know all the signs or not. And a great example of that is my last video where I analyzed Alan Dershowitz making a denial. And if you don't know who he is a top defense attorney who's defended many high-status people. But because he was defending himself and had to fudge the truth, I believe, he made lots of the mistakes that anyone else would make. Although he did it, he used some more advanced tactics as well to manipulate the audience. So just because you know all the ways to spot a liar does not make you a good liar. Even myself, I never claimed to be a good liar, right? Because in the heat of the moment, the stress hormone goes up and everything you know goes out the window and you make the same mistakes that anyone else would make. With the one caveat that psychopaths are better liars than the average person, although they still do make specific types of mistakes. So you can catch a psychopath lying, like we did with Casey Anthony. I believe she is a psychopath. But you have to look for slightly different tells. So let me know if you'd like me to do a video about that, right? So that could be in our series of sort of more nuanced, off the beaten path videos, but there's just not enough interest in them right now. All right, next up we have a comment from Charlotte Bronte. When asked if he killed his daughter, Jerry said there's nothing to suggest anything. He wasn't asked if people might think he killed his daughter. He was asked what he knows about his own part in it, or lack of a part in it. It seems like he is saying there's no evidence against him, which is not a denial. That whole answer was a train wreck for Jerry. Yes. And we saw this with Alan Dershowitz as well in my last video, which I think is a criminally underrated video. So please do go watch it. So Alan Dershowitz was asked if he ever did anything with a certain someone whose name I'm not going to mention because YouTube tends to throttle my videos whenever I mention his name. And Alan Dershowitz also pointed to how there's no proof of it. Well, because it was about himself, he should be able to say, I didn't do it. He should be able to give a clear denial. Whereas if he were representing someone else, then talking about proof would be appropriate, because even he doesn't know whether or not his client is telling him the truth. Right? So it's different if you're defending someone else, in which case reasonable doubt is appropriate. Even if they deny it to you, you don't know for a fact that their denial is accurate. But if you're speaking for yourself, you should be able to deny it point blank. Whether there's evidence or not, you know the truth. You know if you did it or not. So the fact that Jerry uses the same technique where he resorts to talking about what can and cannot be proven is a type of persuasion that is inappropriate when you're talking about yourself. It's a way to deflect from giving a denial. Right? So if you are defending yourself, I expect you to be able to deny it. And if you don't, if you start talking about how things can be proven, that is weak. Whereas let's say he was talking about things that Kate did and he was defending her. Then proof and evidence would be reliable because there's no way for him to know 100% whether or not she's telling the truth. So this is a great point raised by Charlotte. And then, as always, I recommend checking out the comments on my old videos because I do have the smartest subscribers on YouTube, and they make excellent points and reiterate things. They echo things from old videos. So even if you don't have time to watch all my videos yet, you can see other concepts raised in the comments that I might not have mentioned in the video itself, just because I did not want to belabor the point. Okay, so please do like, comment, share this video, and at the end of this video, you will see, if you like this video, you will love this one over here. And if you want to see my entire McCanns playlist, you can click the link in the pinned comment, or you can click over on this side of the screen, which should be my entire McCanns playlist. You can click through there and see all the videos there. Until next time, stay true.